Time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines in the press. Solange Moujon joining us on the set. Hello to you, Solange.
I will.
Starting with Emmanuel Macron's campaign pledges.
Yeah, the election is less than a month away, and Macron has finally unveiled his campaign promises during a 4-hour press conference with journalists. And for the conservative paper Le Figaro, his plans aren't any too different from what is happening now. Its headline reads, "Change inside continuity." The paper laments pledges of tax cuts and reforms to France's welfare system are that they are not too innovative. But it writes that what France needs now is not new ideas, but efficiency, which Le Figaro says Macron has plenty of. But for Libération, it says that Macron's promises are empty ones. On its front page, the left-leaning paper has a wordplay. Il y pense en nous rasant, or that Macron thinks of the French people while he's shaving. This is a nod to Nicolas Sarkozy, who used a similar phrase while he was running for president. But the headline also means he thinks of us while he is cutting us down. For Libération, the villain of Macron Season 2 is the same as Season 1, himself, or his monarchical Jupiter tendencies.
And what are the other candidates? How have they reacted to Macron's 4-hour campaign event?
Well, for Valérie Pécresse of the Rights Républicains, a pillage is going on here. As Le Monde tells us, she feels that Macron has stolen her platform, that he's a chameleon that tells everyone what he or she wants to hear, but nobody listens. As for Macron's other main rivals, L'Opinion has a drawing by CAC of them wondering, now that Macron has his ducks in a row or has finally come out with his campaign promises, if they can begin shooting him and them down. Now, Mediapart asks if, with Macron's manifesto leaning somewhat to the right, or quite to the right, what left-leaning voters plan to do. The site says that many are now looking to Jean-Luc Mélenchon, even if they dislike his stances and his own ego issues. The temptation of a second round without a far-right candidate seems to be some winning over some of the left-leaning voters.
And now to the war in Ukraine and sanctions against Russia.
Yeah, the International New York Times tells us that the U.S. is beginning to cast a global net to cut off goods from Russia. It's seeing who's on board, who isn't, and who is cheating, with Washington's aim being to cut off the supply of tech and transportation parts. And then, of course, there is the cutting off of oil exports. As The Guardian's weekly magazine tells us, it takes an in-depth look at the West and if it can, quote, slaughter Putin's cash cow, i.e. gas exports. Well, it says that the fears that China could pick up the slack are actually not viable for now, that it would take some 15 years to build such infrastructure of a pipeline. But on the other hand, it says that Germany is still showing some stubborn resistance to harsher energy restrictions. And Axios as well notes that India, too, has been quite happy to buy Russian gas at cheaper prices.
Now, an unlikely voice entering the debate, but could be an influential one. Arnold Schwarzenegger making headlines after a video plea to the Russian people.
Yeah, in a 9-minute emotional video, the Hollywood star and former governor of California asked Russian soldiers to abandon fighting, noting that his own father, who was an Austrian Nazi brown shirt and police chief, was the victim of propaganda and regretted it for the rest of his life. And in the Austrian press, the Klein Zeitung says the star's pleas have caused a stir globally, and the Los Angeles Times agrees that the Austrian-American Arnie has become himself a hero whose weapon is truth and whose own plea as a Republican is also a sign in the U.S. of political unity that the war in Ukraine has created. One that we can see in Chapot's cartoon where the U.S. Congress thanks Zelensky for what he's done for American lawmakers, i.e. getting them to agree on something.
Yeah, but such unity didn't occur yesterday with Volodymyr Zelensky's speech to the Bundestag.
No, the embarrassment, that is the headline of the Hamburger Morgenpost. It says a lack of debate and a focus on procedural minutiae following Zelensky's emotional, historic speech was shameful to many German politicians who wanted it instead to be a turning point.
All right, well, let's move on now to the continued coverage of the release of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe from Iran.
Yes, she is really back. That is the headline of today's Metro in the UK. The paper is celebrating the reunion of the Zaghari-Ratcliffe family after 6 years apart. But The Guardian is asking whether her husband was right to vocally advocate for her release all these years, whether it made the situation worse, or whether it actually made it finally occur and happen. Many government officials have now said that it did help, but the paper explains that the evidence flows both ways, that some lower-profile British hostages were returned after shorter periods. Of course, it all depends on the case and what each side wants in return.
Yeah, and we'll likely never know the real answer to that question, but Indeed. At least she is back. Finally, Solange, you found an article, one way to get rid of our worries.
Yeah, and it is very simple. If you're feeling sad, all you have to do is go out into the street and sing opera really loud. That is at least what a 19-year-old Victoire, her name is Victoire, says helps her chase away her worries and her negative thoughts. Le Parisien met up with her after a TikTok video of her singing went viral, and we actually have that video for you thanks to the TikTok poster Justine Brun. I don't know about you, Will, but I definitely will not be doing that in the street. I'll have to find other means of getting my worries out because I'd probably break some windows if I did that kind of singing.
She put a smile on our face. I'm worried that if we were doing that, we'd actually be adding to people's worries.
Exactly.
All right, Solange, thank you very much. Solange Moujon with a look at what's making headlines.